25 hidden tips and game mechanics the game of Fallout 4 does not really tell you. Before we begin, please note that chapter skip will be available, so if you know the current tip, you can move on over to the next. Let's get going. Unlocking the first portion of the local leader perk certainly has its benefits when constructing your settlements. In purchasing this perk, you are now able to send settlers from one of your settlements to another as a transportation wagon. Doing this will grant both settlements shared resources such as scrap. This is especially handy when setting up a new settlement, but you don't have the required items to create such things as radio emitters to draw in more settlers. Make sure to connect all settlements to at least one other to take full advantage of this. When hovering over the settlement in the in-game map or at the creation/building screen, you can see that the settlement has both requirements and needs. Some of these are self-explanatory, such as making sure there's enough food and water supply, as well as enough beds for your settler count, but one that some may struggle with is the happiness rating. In order to boost this up, you can create items such as a bench press, pommel horse, or if you have the Creation Club, arcade machines, plus a few more items. Placing things such as these at each settlement will higher the happiness trait, enticing more settlers to become part of this big family. Whilst in creative mode, there's a handy thing to know when you're storing your scrap, weapons and food for example. You have several different workstations such as armour, weaponry, cooking and the general workbench. When delivering supplies to one, you don't have to remember where you put each item specifically. Once you place an item in any of the workbenches, it's available to either use or collect from any of the others. For example, if I place adhesive in a cooking station, it's available to collect from the armour one. Entering VATS mode can certainly be useful when dealing with a foe, but what some may not realise is that you can't do this when launching a grenade, but you can still make use of this aspect. After tossing a frag, you can then enter VATS mode and aim directly at the explosive, instead of waiting for it to explode via its own timer, giving the enemy less chance to escape in time. When you've built up quite a settlement with a few settlers, it can be a bit daunting trying to find someone specific. There's a handy way to keep track of where each one is, especially during nightfall. In the creation mode, you can of course make beds for your settlers, but what some may not realise is that similar to how you would assign people to general resources such as defence or crops, you can also assign a specific person to a specific bed, making it easier to keep track on where everyone is. When you meet new people, primarily the main NPCs of the title, such as Nick Valentine or Piper Wright, after completing a small portion of the narrative, or sometimes just engaging in conversation, you can now pair up with one of them at a time as they become your companion. But referring back to the local leader perk, where you assign settlers to transportation wagons, it can be difficult to remember exactly who you sent where. Also, after parting ways with a companion, the game prompts you to send said person to a specific settlement of your choice, also presenting opportunity to forget. In the settlement building section, under Power, then Miscellaneous, you can build the Vault-Tec Population Management System. Through this, you can not only assign work detail to settlers, but also locate the primary ones by now using your Pip-Boy. Now the next one personally took me quite some time to realise, but when you know it, it's a real big time saver. When building your settlement, you can scrap containers such as toolboxes and chests. I used to empty the contents first, then physically carry the items to the workbench for storage. This is not needed. You'll notice I've placed both 308 and 44 rounds in the locker, but instead of emptying it, you can just scrap the entire locker and all the contents within will automatically be transferred to the workshop. Heading to the workbench, you can now see both items stored safely. Whether you have obtained at least one set of power armor or several, it's always handy to make sure that when not in use to remove the fusion core that powers it. If left inside, anyone can enter the armor. This happens quite often during conflict, where a settler will instinctively use it for defense against raiders and the like, but it can also be stolen by the enemy, forcing you to significantly damage the armor pieces, later costing supplies when repairing. Back to finding lost settlers. If you're in a large settlement such as Sanctuary Hills and you're looking for someone specific, there's a handy build that can really help out here. Enter creative mode, then the resources section, and then the miscellaneous tab. Under there, you'll find a bell, which informs us that it's used to gather nearby settlers, and it does exactly that. After placement, give the bell a ring and watch as all settlers gather at this very location. Throughout your time in the Wasteland, you'll probably come across holotapes that provide little mini-games if you fancy a break from all the fighting. Most will use a terminal to access these titles, but what some may not have realised, myself included, is that you can play these games anywhere. Simply find the game in the miscellaneous section of your Pip-Boy and press play. Often, when crafting, especially near the start of the game, you may lack the required item to create what you need. Instead of trying to remember specific things or making lists like some do, you can easily just place a search on them. By pressing the right bumper or your corresponding key on the item you wish to create, this will place a small magnifying glass next to the lacking items. After doing this, when visiting a store or even searching the Wasteland itself, you will notice that the icon is still visible, reminding you of what you need to purchase or collect. You'll probably notice as I traverse around Sanctuary that almost all of my settlers are wearing Vault-Tec jumpsuits. This is something you can alter with both your settlers or companions if you wish to do so. When speaking with each, you're often given an opportunity to select the trade option. After selecting this, if you hand the NPC a specific item of clothing, flip on over to their section, press the required prompt button and the settler will change clothing into whichever you have chosen for them. This also works with weaponry too, but when doing this, make sure to hand over enough ammunition, as when they run out, they'll revert back to their original weapon, which is often not a very powerful one. Are you sick of the bright green glow of your Pip-Boy? You can change it. The process to do this is pretty simple. Head to the pause menu, settings, and then display. When here, scroll to the very bottom of the menus and you can alter the colour to your liking. Also, it's not just the emitting light that's altered. When accessing your Pip-Boy, the entire colour scheme has changed too. If you're sick of the Pip-Boy's lights altogether, there is an alternative. If you manage to find a mining helmet with a lamp on, when equipped, holding the button you would normally use to illuminate your Pip-Boy will now light up your mining helmet instead. Many prefer this as a lighting mode, believing the Pip-Boy light to be a little overpowered. Also, depending on which mining helmets you collect, you can have different colours too. When equipping yourself in armour for protection in preparation for the Wasteland, be mindful on which items you choose. When wearing thinner clothes, such as a t-shirt and jeans, you can often place armour pieces over the top, adding to your protection, but some pieces of clothing, such as the Colonial Duster or the Corsair uniform, won't allow this. Players may make the mistake believing that the armour is underneath, when in fact it's been removed altogether. As you progress further along your journey in the Wasteland, after defeating enemies and looting their remains, most will collect only ammunition and health items, leaving the much weaker weapons and clothing in favour of the much more powerful ones you're currently sporting. But did you know this next little handy tip? Instead of ignoring the weaker guns, such as the pipe pistol, which holds the 38 rounds and does a measly damage of only 10 hit points, collecting the weapon for you to either later scrap or returning it to the fallen foe will still add the bullets in the clip, magazine or chamber to your inventory. Watch closely to the count of my 38 bullets as I collect the weapon. See how it's added an additional 4. Something I personally didn't realise until I began research for this video was that when playing in third person, there's alternative animations you can experience whilst in combat. Double tapping the power assault button will often produce a more hand-to-hand approach when facing an enemy. As Fallout 4 is a first-person shooter, something that may be overlooked by a lot of people is that there is a cover and peek action. When close to a wall or cover of any sort, whilst aiming down your sights, the game will automatically pop out of cover, presenting opportunity for you to fire your weapon. One of my favourite perks is actually a trio of sorts, the ability to pacify enemies. Through different perk purchases such as Intimidation, Wasteland Whisperer or Animal Friend, this presents the player with opportunity to cease the enemy's actions, convincing them to lower their weapons and stop attacking you. Be wary though, even if you have the perk, this still won't always work. If you find yourself atop high places, such as skyscrapers and whatnot, and wish to reach ground level, you can do this safely without either traversing all the way back through the building you've just cleared, or risking imminent death after a great fall. If you're wearing power armour, this can defend greatly against this. You'll notice when loading up your Pip-Boy device the little avatar of the Pip-Boy himself. This avatar will represent the player's current condition, such as if they're healthy or injured, but have you noticed the Pip-Boy's icon when you have soaked up too much radiation? It turns into a ghoul. Don't worry though, radiation is easily dealt with by using packets of Radaway. One aspect of building at settlements that is often overlooked is the ability to scrap items just outside of the building zone. A simple trick but a handy one. If you're on the edge of the green zone, such as I am here in Sanctuary, but the item you want is just outside of the zone limits, if it's small enough, you can use the grab feature to pick it up and carry it back to your settlement, making it available for you to then scrap. Also, if cars are your choice and they're just outside of the zone, there's a gameplay glitch you can utilize by using a corpse to push the car in the direction of your settlement. Game logic. When applying mods to your weapon, you'll often have to level up to the required perk to do so, but there's a handy and yet simple way to get around this. If you have a weapon you're not using, take it to the weapons workbench and remove the added mod, as I've done here with the hardened receiver on my sniper rifle. Doing this will place the modification in the player's inventory, allowing you to place it on other similar weapons, even if you haven't acquired the right perk yet. Also, on a quick side note, whilst at the weapons workbench, you can also customize the title of each weapon, giving it a personal feel. Instead of heading to large settlements such as Diamond City, Covenant or Vault 81 to purchase and sell to vendors, one of the perks, the local leader level 2, allows you to build stores at any settlement. After doing so, simply assign a settler to the stand, wait around 24 hours, and you're open for business. This can save you a great deal of travel time. This will not only produce a higher happiness level, but you'll also make a profit every so often from the store, which can be collected from the settlement's workbench under the miscellaneous section. Lastly today, when grabbing any item, did you realise that you can throw it instead of just dropping it back to the ground? When you have it in your hands, hold the reload button down for a few seconds. This will project the item away. The longer you hold the button, the further the item will travel, in a realistic manner of course. There's not a great deal to do with this other than have a bit of fun, such as trying to launch a Vault-Tec lunchbox at stages, should you choose to do so. So there you have it, that was 25 hidden tips and gameplay mechanics that Fallout 4 doesn't outright tell you. Did you know any of these, if not them all? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you have any handy tips that the game doesn't either explain very well or at all, be sure to share with us too. If you enjoyed what you saw today, you all know what to do, and if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Thank you all for watching, you've been listening to Phil of Philby Gaming, and I'll see you in the next video.